I'll start by selecting the Show method of the message box object and press F1 to bring up Help on that. First of all, notice that the Help gives you a full listing of all the different overloads available to you for this method. Each one of these is a different way of calling the Show method, but each one allows you to provide a number of different parameters. There certainly are a lot of different ways to call the Show method. The simplest one allows you just to simply pass a string as a parameter, as we did in this demonstration. Remember, I'm showing the Help here integrated with Visual Studio. You have an option on the My Profile page to have this Help show up in an external window, so it doesn't force you to work with it here. Many people find it useful to be able to flip through the windows by choosing from these tabs at the top of the Designer window. How about as you're typing? You might want help then too. I'll go to the Help menu and turn on Dynamic Help. This window gives you help about things as you're typing them. Let me lock it down so it stays on screen. And let's type some code. I might say dim x as string, and as you'll see, as I type, that window changes to reflect exactly what it is I'm doing. Let's try something else. I'll dim x as, message box, and we should see on the right-hand side the Help change to indicate exactly what we're working on. These two ways of working with Help, either by pressing F1 to get unique help on the thing that's selected, or using Dynamic Help, make it easy to find what you want. In addition, you can always go to the Help menu and choose Contents, Index, or Search, depending on what type of information you need and how you want to look for it. There are other useful tools available to you while you're debugging. To show that, let me run the project once again, and we'll press or click the Command button to again go back to break mode. We've hit our breakpoint, and let's take a moment and look at the Debug menu, under Windows, and let's look at the Call Stack window. Now in VB6, the Call Stack just gave you a very limited view of how you got to where you are. In the .NET platform, however, Visual Studio gives you a huge list of every bit of code you've gone through to get from where you started to where you currently are. For example, the main procedure is the one where this application started. You're currently on the button 1_click. Here's all the procedures you went through along the way to get there. Notice that none of these are written in BASIC. The language is listed here. These are all compiled pieces living in assemblies provided by the .NET framework. But in any case, even if you'd gone through code you didn't write, or through code you inherited or borrowed from someone else, you could tell from the call stack exactly how you got to where you are. I'll press F5 to go back to our running application and shut it down from there. Hello world, it says. We'll shut down the application here, and let's look at the Solution Explorer window. This window, which I'll pin down here, includes information about your project. For example, it includes the form1.vb, and notice, by the way, that project files no longer have different extensions indicating what type of file they are. Everything has a VB extension in a VB project. In a C# project, everything would have a CS extension. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's how it works in Visual Studio.NET. Also, you'll notice in the Solution Explorer window, we have a list of references. I can't tell you how many times I've opened up the References window just to see what I'd currently had referenced in my project. Now it's shown for you here in the Solution Explorer window. You can add new references here by right-clicking on References and choosing Add Reference. Just like in Visual Studio 6, if you want to work with an external component, you need to set a reference to it. Each of these things listed here are components or assemblies provided by the .NET framework. You could add more if you'd like to. These are the only ones we need here, and actually, we're not even using all of these. We're not using system.xml, for example, and could remove it from this project. In addition, sometimes you'll find windows or files that aren't being shown here. There are sometimes the option to show more files. In this case, we'll see that the form itself consists of a form and a resource file associated with it. Once you click to show all files, you can also see the contents of the bin and OBJ folders, so you can see exactly what files there are associated with your project. In addition to the Solution Explorer window, you'll also find Class View. The Class View window allows you to look at your project class by class, so you can dig through the various methods and properties and classes involved in your project. You can see what objects inherit from which other objects, and overall get a nice object-oriented, tree-based view of what's in your project. One other thing you might like to do from the Solution Explorer window is look at properties of your project. Now, if you're coming from VB6, you're used to being able to select any item in the project, go to the Project menu, and look for project properties, but you'll see it's not here. In VisualStudio.net, unless you select the project first, project properties won't appear on the menu. Now that I've selected the project, there it is on the menu. You can also find it by right-clicking on the project itself in the Solution Explorer window, and this brings up the Project Properties window. Interesting how I'm working at a 640 by 480 resolution, and this window really doesn't fit on the screen. Obviously, Microsoft expected that you would work at a higher resolution than 640 by 480, which is required for this recording process. In the property pages, you'll find information about how your project gets built, imports it makes, paths, and other properties you might need to work with. Under configuration properties, you'll find information about debugging, for example, command line arguments, optimizations, the build process, that is where things are going, whether you want to define built-in constants or your own compile time constants, and how you want this project deployed, depending on what kind of project you're creating. You'll notice that you also can work with either the debug version or the release version of your project. At any time, you can choose to work with either one or both. I'll close the project properties and move on from there. Let's get that displayed off the screen. We don't need to look at those things now. So let's stop at this point and create a new project. That is, one that includes a new kind of design surface, different than a Windows form. I'll come to File, choose New, Project, and for now I'm going to choose, just for sake of demonstration, a Windows Service project. We'll discuss Windows Services later, but for now let's create one. Notice I didn't take account of where I was placing it, so I'll need to look later to see where it is so I can delete it. But you'll see that for a Windows Service project, and for other kinds of projects as well, there is no user interface involved. There's no form. To make it possible for you to interact with this in a visual sort of way, Microsoft has provided a designer surface, and you can drag components onto this designer surface to help you build your project. Say, for example, your Windows Surface needed to work with components provided by the .NET Framework. I'll show the Server Explorer here and open up my own machine, and we should now be able to, for example, interact with an event log. If I wanted to programmatically work with the event log, the application event log, I could just select it, drag it onto my design surface, and now I have an event log object provided here. An event log has properties, and you'll see that those properties show up here in the Properties window. I can tell it which log I want to work with, the machine name. You can choose to work with event logs on other machines if you have permissions to do so. You can choose other properties about this, for example, whether it should raise events or not. Let's close this down and go look at the code for this class. Choose View, Code, and you'll see that in this region that they provide, they have created for you a bunch of code dealing with that event log. That is, by creating that design surface and allowing you to drag components onto that design surface, they give you the full capabilities of those objects in an interface that allows you to work with them visually and have Visual Basic let you set properties and have them create code for you. In the Server Explorer, you'll find all sorts of good things: message queues, performance counters, the availability of working with any of your services programmatically. You can, for example, start and stop these services programmatically just by dragging them, for example, onto your surface, and now you have a service controller object that works with the service that you selected. By just bringing up the Properties window, I pressed F4 to bring up the Properties window here, you'll see you could interact with that control, that is, that component that you place on this design surface.